From the street, this garage looks like every other one on the block. Closed door, nothing to see. Inside, 10 machines are quietly running a business that, at full volume, brings in $8,550 in a month. Say that number honestly, though. That's the ceiling, not month one. It takes months of running every system before you're anywhere near it. Nobody hits this number in week one, and if a video tells you otherwise, they're lying to you. Here's what makes 10 machines work together instead of just sitting in the same room doing their own separate things. Almost nothing here stands alone. One machine prints the mold, another casts it, a third personalizes it. The waste from one system becomes the raw material for the next. That's the whole idea behind this garage, and it's why 10 machines can support each other instead of competing for the same 20 hours a week. Most videos like this one hand you a list of machines and stop there. And if you've ever watched one and thought, that's great, but where do I actually sell any of this? You already know the real gap in this niche. Every machine on this list comes with the specific places people actually buy what it makes, not a vague wave toward the internet. Let's start with the machine that makes everything else possible. The cheapest entry point on this list is a fused deposition modeling printer, the kind of machine most people just call a three-dimensional printer. It melts plastic filament and builds an object one thin layer at a time. A few years ago, a machine like this cost well over $1,000 and required constant tinkering to keep it running. Today, a reliable one from a brand like Bamboo Lab runs around $350, fully assembled, and mostly runs itself once it's calibrated. That drop in price and complexity is the entire reason this garage is possible at all. 10 years ago, half of this lineup wouldn't have existed as a realistic hobby to business path. Starting out, 20 items a month at $15 each is $300. Full build out, 60 items a month gets you to $900. That's not a huge number on its own, but remember, this machine is the hub. Everything else on this list either uses it directly or benefits from the customers it brings in. The products that actually move are almost never the decorative ones beginners default to. Functional pieces sell steadily and repeatedly. Drawer organizers cut to a specific size, cable management clips, phone stands, replacement knobs and brackets for furniture nobody makes parts for anymore. Cosplay props and tabletop gaming terrain sell too, but that market is more seasonal and more competitive. And once one printer is reliably profitable, the honest path to scaling isn't buying exotic new machines, it's buying a second identical one and running both at the same time. The same principle real print farms use at much larger scale. The difficulty rating here is low. This is the most beginner-friendly machine on the entire list. Most of the learning curve isn't in the machine itself. It's in finding designs that actually sell. Your first buyers are Etsy, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and local farmers markets. And all four want slightly different things. Functional gadgets sell better on Etsy and at markets, while eBay tends to reward volume and consistency. What kills this business more than anything else is printing what you personally think looks cool instead of what the data says will actually sell. Before you commit an evening of filament and printer time to a new design, check completed and sold listings for similar items first. This is revenue, not profit. Filament costs money, and every printer operator eats a percentage of failed prints while dialing in a new design. Budget for that loss instead of being surprised by it. 2 honest checks before you sell anything out of this garage, because this is where the whole business starts, and it's the segment where people ask about this most. First, activity classification. Most areas require some kind of home occupation registration or a business license once you're regularly selling out of your home. even if customers never actually set foot in your garage. Second, and this is a separate question entirely, zoning. Some municipalities cap how much customer traffic a residential property can have and restrict signage. And that matters more once repair customers start showing up at your door later in this list. Both of these vary by city and by state. So the real first step in this whole business isn't buying a machine. It's a phone call to your local planning office asking both questions directly. Next is a Reason printer, and this one runs about $494 for a solid option like the Elegoo Saturn Ultra. Where the filament printer is fast and forgiving, a resin printer trades speed for detail. It uses light to cure liquid resin layer by layer, and the level of fine detail it captures is genuinely a different category from filament printing. That's exactly why this is the machine that prints your mold masters for the casting system you'll hear about later. And it's also why jewelry makers and tabletop gaming hobbyists specifically seek out resin printed pieces over filament ones. Starting out, 15 items a month at $10 each is $150. Full build out, 45 items a month gets you to $450. The difficulty rating here is moderate. The printing process itself isn't harder than filament printing, but everything after the print finishes adds real steps. Washing the piece in isopropyl alcohol, curing it under ultraviolet light, and handling uncured resin safely along the way. And that safety point isn't optional advice, it's a requirement every single time you use this machine. Uncured resin is a genuine skin and respiratory irritant. Wear gloves and run this machine somewhere with real airflow, not a sealed closet. Your first buyers here are Etsy and eBay, where the detail this machine produces commands a real premium over filament prints, especially for miniatures and small jewelry pieces. Two buyer groups specifically drive this system. Tabletop gaming hobbyists want highly detailed miniatures and terrain pieces that filament printing genuinely can't match at this scale, and that community is active, vocal, and willing to pay for detail work. Jewelry makers use this same printer to produce master patterns for cast rings and pendants, which is a direct bridge into the casting system later on this list. One machine, two very different customer bases, both paying a premium for the same underlying capability. It's also worth understanding why detail matters this much to these two buyer groups specifically, because it explains the pricing. A miniature painter is going to photograph their finished piece up close and post it, and a rough or blurry print embarrasses them in front of their own community. A jewelry buyer is going to wear the finished piece daily, close to their skin, where every imperfection shows. Both groups are effectively paying you to make sure they never have to think about the manufacturing process again. And that peace of mind is worth real money to people who've been burned by a cheaper option before. A laser engraver is next, and here you've got a real choice. A budget 20-watt diode laser runs around $400 and will handle wood, leather, and acrylic without trouble. A step up, something like an X-Tool with Air Assist runs closer to $850 and buys you faster, cleaner cuts with less smoke residue left behind on your material. Starting out, 30 items a month at $12 each is $360. Full build out, 90 items a month gets you to $1,080. The difficulty rating is low to moderate. The design software has a real learning curve if you've never used vector graphics before, but the machine itself is forgiving once you understand it. Here is a critical safety note, because this mistake is common and genuinely dangerous, not just a minor inconvenience. Never laser cut polyvinyl chloride, sometimes just called vinyl sheet plastic, or any chlorinated plastic. It releases chlorine gas when a laser burns through it. There is a vinyl cutter later on this list for a reason. It cuts vinyl mechanically with a blade, not with heat, specifically so you never make this mistake. Your first buyers are Etsy, local trophy and award shops that outsource overflow work, and craft fairs. This machine also personalizes the cast products and the printed pieces from earlier in this loop, which means repeat purchases from customers who already bought something and come back once they realize you can add a name or a date to it. The material versatility here is the real selling point. Wood cutting boards, slate coasters, leather goods, and acrylic awards all take an engraving beautifully, and the personalization angle is what separates this from a generic gift shop item. A cutting board is a cutting board. A cutting board with a family's last name and a wedding date burned into the corner is a completely different product with a completely different price tag, and the material cost barely changes between the two. A desktop computer numerical control router is next, commonly just called a router. Once you're using it day to day, it cuts and carves solid material, usually wood, using a spinning bit guided by a computer file instead of a hand tool. A small desktop-sized unit runs roughly $250, though that's a figure I haven't been able to confirm against current pricing, so treat it as a rough estimate rather than a lock number. Starting out, 6 signs a month at $40 each is $240. Full build out, 15 signs a month gets you to $600. The difficulty rating is moderate to high. Honestly, the hardest software learning curve on this list alongside the repair bench later. Turning a design file into machine instructions, the router can actually follow, takes real weeks to months practice before it feels natural. This is also the loudest machine in the entire garage, and that's exactly why the zoning check from earlier matters here specifically. Noise complaints are the single most common reason a home-based shop like this gets an unwanted visit from code enforcement, more common than any other issue on this list. Run it during reasonable daytime hours and know your local noise ordinance before you run it at all. Your first buyers are Facebook Marketplace, local businesses looking for signage directly, and Etsy. This machine also cuts display stands and market booth signage used by every other product line on this list when you're selling at fairs and markets. So think of it as infrastructure for the whole operation, not just its own separate product line. Address signs, custom cutting boards with routed lettering, and business signage for local shops are the steadiest sellers here, and they command a noticeably higher price per item than most of the printed or laser cut products earlier on this list. That's the trade-off for the harder learning curve. This machine works with solid hardwood rather than plastic, filament, or thin sheet material. And customers understand intuitively that solid wood costs more, so the pricing conversation is easier even though the production process is harder. The biggest mistake beginners make on this machine is running the wrong feed rate for the wood species they're cutting, which either burns the material or snaps a bit mid-cut. Both mistakes cost you the material and the bit, so it pays to test on scrap before committing to a customer's order. 3 machines work as one combined system next because they all feed the same customers and often end up on the same finished product. A vinyl cutter, something like a Cricut maker, runs about $400. A heat press runs surprisingly little, about $82 for a basic tumbler-style unit. A sublimation printer bundle, the kind that prints onto special paper before the design gets pressed onto a blank, runs about $650. Here's how the 3 connect. The vinyl cutter makes branding decals and labels for every single product line on this list, and it feeds finished designs straight to the heat press. The sublimation printer feeds that same heat press with mug wraps, tumbler designs, and fabric panels. One press sits at the center, 2 different machines feed it, and one shared customer base buys apparel and drinkware from all 3 at once. Picture a local youth soccer team that orders vinyl decorated water bottles, heat pressed jerseys, and sublimated fan mugs, all from the same single order. That's this system working exactly as intended. Combined, starting out 40 decals at $5, 20 shirts at $18, and 25 mugs at $14 comes to $1,010. Full build out, 100 decals, 50 shirts, and 50 mugs comes to $2,100 across all three machines together. The difficulty rating is low across all three. Honestly, the most beginner-friendly block on this entire list after the printer you started with. This is revenue, not profit, and it's worth saying plainly here because the combined number above can look more impressive than the real margin. Sublimation blanks specifically, the mugs and tumblers themselves before you print on them, can run 30 to 50% of what you eventually charge per finished piece. Your first buyers are local sports teams and events, Etsy, and school or business bulk orders. What kills this business is underpricing custom apparel to try to compete with big box print shops on price alone. You will lose that fight every time because they win on volume you can't match from a garage. You win instead on fast turnaround and being a real local relationship, not the cheapest option on the internet. This combined system also carries the most seasonal swing of anything on this list, and it's worth planning around rather than being surprised by. Back to school season drives custom apparel orders, spring and early summer drive team and event orders as leagues start up. And the holiday season drives personalized mugs and gifts hard enough that many small operators make a real share of their yearly total in about 6 weeks. The slow months, typically mid-winter outside of the holiday rush, are exactly when it's worth catching up on the printer and laser systems instead, which don't carry the same seasonal pattern. A casting station comes next, built around a vibration table and silicone molds. A basic vibration table runs about $200, and silicone mold material runs $30 or more per gallon. Though I'll be honest, exact current pricing on this equipment hasn't been confirmed yet, so treat those as rough estimates. This machine uses the mold masters printed by the filament printer and the resin printer earlier on this list. Nothing here starts from scratch. You print a master shape once, make a reusable silicone mold from it, and then cast copies from concrete, resin, or other pourable materials indefinitely. Starting out 30 items a month at $18 each is $540. Full build out 80 items a month gets you to $1,440, the single highest revenue system on this entire list. The difficulty rating is moderate. The casting process itself is genuinely simple. Mix, pour, wait. But cure times are physical, not a skill you can rush through with practice. Concrete specifically needs 24 to 48 hours or more before it's ready to demold, plus additional time for sealing afterward. No amount of experience speeds up chemistry, and the biggest mistake on this machine is demolding early because a piece looks solid on the surface. It isn't fully cured underneath, and rushing it is the single most common way beginners crack a piece they'd already sold. One safety note worth taking seriously. Mixing dry concrete produces silica dust, and you want a proper respirator for that step, not just a basic dust mask, which doesn't filter fine enough particles. Your first buyers are local garden centers on a wholesale basis, Etsy, and farmers markets, where cast planters and decorative pieces sell steadily. The economics here work because a single silicone mold made once from a printed master casts hundreds of copies before it wears out. Planters, coasters, decorative pavers, and small sculptural pieces are the steadiest sellers, and garden centers in particular like buying in wholesale batches ahead of spring and summer, which smooths out what would otherwise be a seasonal product into something closer to a standing order. This is the system where the loop pays off most visibly. The printer at the start of this list made the master shape for free, using a design file instead of raw material and hours of hand sculpting. The mold made from that master then produces copies almost indefinitely, at a fraction of the material cost of the original print. Very little else on this list turns a one-time design cost into ongoing revenue this cleanly. which is exactly why it's the highest earning single system in the whole garage. A repair bench is next, built around a soldering station and an ultrasonic cleaner, together running roughly $200, another figure that still needs real sourcing before you would want to treat it as locked. This system runs on printed replacement parts from the very first machine on this list, and that is often the actual reason a repair is even possible in the first place, when the original manufacturer stopped selling that exact part years ago and has no plans to start again. Starting out, 8 repairs a month at $45 each is $360. Full build out, 24 repairs a month gets you to $1,080. The difficulty rating is the highest on this entire list, tied with the router software learning curve. Diagnostic skill, actually figuring out what is broken before you can fix it, takes longer to build than any other skill in this garage. Nobody becomes reliably good at this in a weekend, and claiming otherwise would be dishonest. Your first buyers are Facebook Marketplace, local repair listings, and eBay for repaired unit flips once you've built a small inventory of fixed devices. Here's a detail worth knowing. Repair customers consistently convert into your best repeat customers for custom prints, engraving, and cast pieces later, once they trust you with something they genuinely care about fixing correctly. There's a wider shift working in this system's favor. Manufacturers have been discontinuing replacement parts faster and faster, betting that customers will simply buy a new device instead of repairing an old one. And that's exactly the gap a printed replacement part fills. A knob, a bracket, a battery door, a gear that would otherwise mean throwing out an entire working appliance for one broken piece the manufacturer won't sell anymore. That's not a small niche, that's a growing one. And it's part of why right to repair has become a real movement rather than a fringe complaint. The last machine on this list is a screen printing setup, and it is priced differently in purpose than the vinyl and heat press system from earlier, even though the products can look similar at a glance. A basic 1 to 2 color starter kit runs somewhere between $100 and $200, though I do not have an exact current price confirmed for this one either. Screen printing is built for bulk, single design runs rather than one-off custom pieces, think team orders, event shirts, and tote bags printed 50 or 100 at a time, where the cost per piece drops fast at volume in a way sublimation and heat press transfers do not. The vinyl cutter from earlier on this list also cuts stencils for this system when you want a cleaner edge than screen emulsion alone gives you, so even this final machine loops back into something you already own. Starting out 40 items a month at $9 each is $360. Full build out 100 items a month gets you to $900. The difficulty rating is low to moderate. Preparing a screen takes real practice to get clean, consistent results, but once a screen is properly prepared, the actual printing goes fast, much faster per unit than any other customization method on this list. One more safety note here because it belongs in the same category as the resin printer earlier. Screen printing emulsion and the chemicals used to reclaim screens for reuse need ventilation and gloves too. Your first buyers are local sports leagues and event organizers looking for bulk orders, school fundraisers, and Etsy for pre-made runs you print ahead of demand. The order sizes here look different from anything else on this list. A single dining chair is one job. A youth soccer league ordering shirts for 8 teams is one job too, just a much bigger one. And that's exactly where this machine earns its place. Once a screen is burned and ready, printing the 50th shirt costs almost nothing extra beyond the shirt itself, which is the opposite of how the sublimation printer from earlier works, where every single piece costs roughly the same to produce whether you print 1 or 100. Now let's look at what all 10 actually add up to when they're running together. Stack just the 2 printers and you're at $1,350. Add the laser and the router and you're past $3,000. Bring in the full customization line, the casting station, the repair bench, and screen printing, and you're at the full ceiling $8,550 a month. That number assumes every single system running at full volume with established local relationships, months into running this operation, not 10 machines switched on for the first time this weekend. And here's one more honest detail almost nobody else in this niche mentions. 10 machines do not run simultaneously on one garage circuit. They run in shifts. Plan your electrical load before you plan your product line, because tripping a breaker mid-print is a lesson you only need to learn once. One thing you won't find in this loop on purpose is filament recycling. Home recycling machines run anywhere from around $650 to well over $14,000. And the economics only make sense if you're running enough printers constantly to actually feed one, which this setup honestly isn't quite there yet. If a video tells you filament recycling is free money at this scale, they haven't actually done the math on it. Notice something else about this whole loop, going back to the buyer question from the very beginning. Every single system on this list feeds customers into at least one other system. Someone who buys a printed gift comes back for a laser engraved version of the same idea. Someone who orders custom apparel for a team event becomes a repeat buyer once they know you also do signage. Someone who drops off a broken device for repair becomes a custom print customer the moment they see what else is sitting on your bench. You're not running 10 separate small businesses that happen to share a garage. You're running one business with 10 different products, and the customer overlap between them is most of what makes the full ceiling realistic instead of theoretical. If you're starting from zero and don't know where to begin, start with the filament printer. It's the cheapest entry point on this entire list. It has the most forgiving learning curve of anything here. And it's the one machine every other system in this garage eventually depends on in some way. If you already have some hands-on comfort with tools and want to skip straight to a higher price point, the router or the resin printer are reasonable second choices, though both carry a steeper learning curve than the printer you'd start with otherwise. 2 honest checks before you sell anything: activity classification and zoning, and they're 2 separate questions, not one. Call your local planning office and ask both directly, because the answer changes depending on your city and your state, and nobody watching this video lives in the same one you do. None of this replaces a job overnight, and treating it that way is how people burn out and quit in month 2. What it actually does is give you a real second stream of income built on equipment that mostly runs itself once it's set up correctly in a space you already own, selling to buyers who are easy to name because they're specific, local, and already looking for exactly what these 10 machines make. Start with one machine, get it profitable, and let the loop do the rest of the work from there. That's the whole difference between a garage full of expensive hobbies and a garage that quietly pays you back every single month.